all of this knowledge, I just want to push through virtual photography in a way onto my clients so they have an amazing experience and they can just lean back and enjoy and then have amazing photos of themselves that they're proud of. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast Biz on the Brain with your host, me, Anne-Marie, where we talk about how to be your most authentic, truest, and unapologetic self in life and business and anywhere in between, because I'm personally on my own path to self-discovery, and that really includes very heavily intuition and authenticity. And what the heck does that mean? And one thing that I found is really important to me personally as a creative, and also I am not just a creative in business, but I'm always creating something or other, which could be me being a human design manifester, but also art just speaks to my soul and I see beauty everywhere in the world. It's like one skill set that I have, and I personally love bonding with people over photography, which means they could be behind or in front of the camera, but we are co-creating something, and that doesn't just tell you something about the person, how they see the world, how they frame things visually and in their minds, and how they can also visually communicate, and then also communicate within the shoot, like how they treat you during it, like especially if it's a stressful scenario where things do not go according to plan, because let's face it, if you do outside shoots, there's always something going wrong. Like that is my number one rule especially when I do video. I just assume something will go wrong. And when it does, I'm just like, it's out of the way. Shoot. I'm always prepared for something happening. And I've learned over time that art actually helps me create different things, better things oftentimes, because it adds some kind of layer to it that wasn't anticipated. Some kind of chaos that flavors it a little bit, that just sparks my creativity even more, that gives me a challenge to gnaw on, like a factor that I have to think on my feet with, and I personally thrive in that. I loathe it and love it at the same time. I know not everybody can thrive in the chaos and in the unpredictability of doing photo or video shoots that have things going wrong. But if you're not having all of the budget and all of the team members with all of the little special skills, then it's just normal that you cannot account for everything and you cannot control everything to a T. And so I want to talk in this episode specifically about virtual photography and how virtual photography can help businesses overcome being stuck with content, overcome being bland, and actually help build confidence, help build community, and help build your own core self. So a lot of C's. So yeah, virtual photography can really help you find yourself more as a business owner. So like I said, for me, photography is a way to bond with other people, but also to find out more about yourself and, do some self-care, self-love, self-bonding. Is that a word? So let me just briefly run you through how I found photography as my own preferred tool of externalizing my internal world to show other people, but also help me figure out the outside world internally, because I'm an external processor, so that means I need to talk often multiple times to multiple people and kind of use them as a sounding board to hear my thoughts back or to hear myself talk out loud, because I'm always in my head with my ADHD. It's always noisy up there. There's so many thoughts, there's so many analysis, there's such a monologue going on at all times, sometimes even layered. When people say you can only hold one thought at any time, I'm like, are you neurotypical? Because I have an orchestra playing, somebody narrating everything, somebody telling me about all the things that happened on December the 12th of 1997 or something. And as somebody who is just like, oh, shiny object, look at the squirrel. There's so much going on. But like that aside, what I found with photography was that I could actually focus on something, which is great. Like I tell you, there's a lot going on, but like it helps me focus on something. And so all of the noises suddenly are like laser focused on the thing. And it would be like, oh my God, imagine if we could like stand over it or next to it on the same level of it. So I started actually like crawling on the floor to get different perspective. I would climb trees, I would climb walls, I would like do anything to get that angle that I saw in my mind as being an amazing vantage point for framing the photography. And I would just go do it. I would figure it out along the way, and people would look at me strange, and I would get comments like, I could never, like, that is interesting, the way you think, and I would have never thought of using that angle or like exerting myself in that way. Or, some people would be, I don't know if that's even passive aggressively complimenting, like, oh my God, you're so brave for being so different and, weird in some way. I'm like, I don't know, thank you. But no, it's true. I do a lot of things for the photo, like the typical meme or joke, the things we do for the gram. I've done that way before social media, way before smartphones. I grew up in the 90s, and I had the typical camera, which you developed and you waited for 2 weeks, I think, until you got your film back, and it was expensive, and I ruined all of the films. My parents were upset. Because I kid you not, in every single photo, I had my thumb sneak in there. Like, it always wanted to be a cameo in all the photos. Because I couldn't hold the camera properly, or I was overly excited to take the photo. And I was focused on the composition and the object or whatever. And I just was blind to the thumb. Or it didn't show up in the viewfinder. I don't know what it was, but I ruined it. And so I was super glad, and my parents were super glad when they gifted me a digital camera, I think for my 18th birthday. And I went crazy. The first thing I did was just like go for daily walks and like take photos of every single flower I found. And like if there's a bee, I would stand there for like half an hour. Me, who never has patience for anything, I would just stand until like the bee would land perfectly in this one spot I wanted to, or like I would try to focus it. Like I had this super great patience suddenly to get that photo, to get that shot, or to show people exactly what I was seeing the beauty in, and they wouldn't get it. So I tried different angles, different ways to light it up, different ways to like use the foreground and background to shift the focus, really direct the attention. And that was my way of showing people, see, that's what I mean. That's what I use photography for, to show people what my brain does in a way, to make people see what I see, because with my neurodivergent brain, a lot of people don't get it. And so when I realized that photography can help me communicate and also can help me organize my thoughts, because if you just like whip out your phone and take a photo just straight up as you like see it with your eyes, the camera will not capture that at all. The camera doesn't get as much detail or information as your eyeballs and brain do, obviously. So you have to learn certain techniques to really get what you want to communicate. So there's some skill involved, but I've always been the more intuitive type of photographer. To this day, when people try to talk to me about camera and gear, I feel like I'm a big fraud. I feel like dumb. And then I'm like, what am I doing here? I've been like taking photos for decades, and I still like, if you start talking with shutter speed and aperture and like all kinds of features of cameras, my mind just goes blank. And then they're like, so yeah, what are your settings? I literally just look at the camera, figure out what I kind of want to do, then I fiddle around. I cannot explain specifically what I'm doing, but I know what I need to do to make it work. And I've had friends, I remember in university, I shared a ton of photos. I changed my profile picture every 3 days or so because I was just playing around with it so much. I had such a great time, and it helped me release some pent-up energy from all of the studying. And I've always been very hermit-like. So if it wasn't going for parties at night, which I hated because I'm an introvert and it's too much noise and all of the stimulation for my ADHD brain is too much. If I don't know, get more into the conversation, but you can't really converse much if it's like party music. And then people, I don't know, don't get me started. I don't like parties. I don't like clubs. I'd rather have a good conversation, like in a coffee shop or go for a walk. Like that's me or do a photography thing, right? To bond. And people ask me like, so yeah, what's your thing? Like, how do you get all of these different perspectives and angles and the colors and the framing? And I was like, I just point the camera. I don't know. I wasn't conscious of what I was doing. I was very puzzled by the questions. And then some of them would come with me as I just took photos. And they were like, see, I knew you were doing things. Like, look at you. You did the things. I'm like, what did I do? I'm like, I was so unaware. They're like, you just fiddled around with the little wheel on top and you like bent down and you like crouched on the floor and then you hopped over there and then you like took one tiny step to the right and then two tiny steps to the left, but like went back into the middle and like then you just lowered yourself a little bit and then you would just tilt the camera and then you would check for the sunlight and then did all of these things without thinking about it. So there was a lot of technique involved in some way, but it, like I said, it's very intuitive. If I get and dissect it, I will instantly lose interest. I like even when people ask me like, how do you feel? And I'm just trying to feel them, they're just gone. Like if I'm too conscious of things, I kind of shut down. It is an interesting way to do things. I still don't understand myself fully all the time, but I just learned that I loved what I was doing, even though it is not specifically strategic in any way, but that is exactly my creative process in any kind of medium, be it paint, art, doodling, photo crafting. I have a plan roughly, and then I will start doing it and things will turn out entirely differently every time. Even if I'm supposed to copy something like, like an art class at school, when I make you copy artworks or copy a style, I would start like it, I will get the idea and I would study it as I'm drawing it. And then I'm like, I got it. And then I will disrupt the entire thing. I will like add features. I will like play with the colors and play with the features that are the mark holes of that specific thing. And I would make it my own, still within the constraints of the task. But I would just go rogue and I love it. I love it. And I do that in my art. I do that in my business. I do that with and for my clients, because so many times that's exactly what you need for your personality branding and especially social media marketing. You need to stand out. So you need to do something differently. So you need to be disruptive. And you can't just be disruptive if you're doing the thing over and over the same way. And if you're looking at the competition and copy them, or if you're just following all of the trend sounds. And there's a space for all kinds of strategies, but sometimes you just need somebody to bulldoze things over and rearrange the thing. So that's what I do. And so virtual photography came to me half a year ago, ish, like in March, I think, of 2023. I was doing a lot of networking virtual sessions, and one of the lovely ladies was like, yeah, I'm a photographer. I do brand shoots all over England. And I was like, oh, so you drive around a lot? She's like, no, I just do it virtually. And I was like, come again? Like, what do you mean? And then so she introduced me to this concept of virtual photography, and my brain couldn't compute. I was like, I don't get it. And then she told me the app. So Shutter app is what she was using, and left me with that. And then she just left this networking group, which is Affinity, which is amazing for any women entrepreneurs who are like in the European time zones. Definitely go check that out. Like, it is amazing, the community that I've found in there. And it is not about selling anything. You can if you want to, but it's really about finding like-minded women who also run businesses and just want to talk about anything. Maybe ask questions, maybe ask for tips, maybe just share about the day. Like the community you don't have when you're self-employed. You don't go to the water cooler in the office to meet people and like have a little social time. When you're self-employed, that is missing. So I really love that. But yeah, I found this app and I was like, let's try it. If I don't get it, I might just do it and then I get it. And it's true. Essentially, when I tell people what virtual photography is, they are confused. Like I was confused. And I've been trying to find ways to explain to people what it is and how it can work, because it is such a game changer for businesses who put content out there to be visible, to show their personality, to show their different angle, and to show their products and services in a fun and creative way. Because if you create content by yourself all the time, it's possible, but it's so frustrating. And there's so many variables you have to take care of at the same time as you're doing photos. You have to be multiple people setting stuff up, doing hair, makeup, outfit, coordinating the colors, the composition, the actual lighting and the actual gear setup, but then also taking the photos, which is like a photographer does a lot of different things. But then you also have to be the model, and then you have to look good, but then you have to be the photographer again and look if you did it right, and you have to go switch back and forth all the time while you're glancing at the screen. And it's just annoying, absolutely annoying. And it's never as good as if you have somebody telling you, like, tilt your chin up just a tiny bit, there's light on your forehead, maybe move it back an inch, maybe smile more and stuff like that. But it's really also about the energy that you get by working with somebody. Because when you are by yourself, and I noticed that because I've done a lot of self-portraits, and that energy, that excitement, that playfulness gets lost, and I cannot fully recreate that even if I put on the music to get me in the vibe, even if I set the intention and hype myself up for it. But if there's somebody there you can play off of, the energy, the bounce, the prompts, it is so much more different to get impulses from somebody else, or to laugh with somebody else over the silliness of it all. But if you're doing by yourself, you will notice that when you're posing in front of a mirror, it's different than if you just took the selfie. It's different than if your friend took a selfie, took a photo of you. All of those photos have a different vibe too, because you're much more stiff, you're much more staged, you're much more serious. There's something missing. There's a little spark that is missing. And so that's what I love about virtual photography, where you're not alone, even though you're technically alone in your room. That's why I call it Selfie 2.0. Because here's how this works. So virtual photography works through an app that, you have a camera app on your phone. Alrighty, so that is an app that allows you to use the inbuilt lenses on your phone, the front and back lenses. So you can download an app that can tap into that app. But since it's online, somebody else, like the photographer, can get access, or you can give them access during the session to tap into the camera for you, to remotely, say, snap the picture, to remotely flip back and forth camera. So you can do the selfie camera, so you see the screen, or you can do the actual high quality camera back of camera and take better photos. You don't see yourself then, but you will still hear the photographer. So it is like a Zoom call, but since you're farther away from the camera, which always looks better, which is another reason why selfies, especially if you take them close up with your arm extended, don't look flattering. It's because of the distortion from the lens. The more you step back and the more different your focal length is adjusted, the better you look. Otherwise your face might look flat or squished. There's a lot of example pictures. If you just Google aperture length portrait, you will see example photos of how your face gets distorted depending on what lens you're using and how close you are from the camera and what it does. I don't want to get into the technical details, but it has a huge effect. So imagine you just have a phone call with your best friend, and they see what you do because it's like a video call, but you just show them around your room, right? So sometimes you would just take the camera and you would show them. So you don't see yourself all the time, because why would you need to see yourself talking? And this is the same with the photography. Why would you have to see yourself all the time? You think, because I need to see what I'm doing, if I look cute, if there's something on my face. That is not your job anymore. When you do a virtual photography session, your job is to look cute and have fun. That's it. That is my goal when I do virtual photography sessions with my clients. I just want them to not be in their head at all. This is just fun bonding time. And they get a ton of content. They get a ton of cool photos on top of it all. But the core aspect really is about fun. Because that is my mission, in business. I just want people to not be so serious all the time. To take things seriously is okay. But to just be so serious and so stuck and so flat and bored and exhausted from work is not fun, especially when you're self-employed. Why did you put yourself through that if you're just miserable? If you're just hustled to the ground, until you're burned out, until you just don't have a life anymore, like what's the point? No, so it can be fun. Making money can be fun. Having a business can be fun. And it is fun. Claim it. So what they have to do is just listen to my instructions and follow them and then interpret them in a way that feels comfortable to them. Because I am not out there telling people exactly what to do. They're not my puppets. If they are like, oh, I don't like that pose, like that is not me, or I don't wear those clothes that I suggested, and I'm like, okay, what would you like more? Like, what would feel more comfortable? Like, what's the vibe? Like, we always have a chat up front to see what the actual intention is, the actual goal for the photos, because that is also important when you take photos into account for your business. It needs to holistically make sense. And that's my personal approach to anything. Like, before I do any photo shoot or any video edit or any kind of content help strategy session for my clients, I will need to know. Why? Why are we doing this? What's the point? Where does it live? Because if you just hire somebody to create something and you're not helping them out with what you're about and what the goal is, then it will just be their signature way of doing things. There's nothing wrong with that, because hopefully you've done your research and you found somebody that you like their style of and that you think the style would fit with your stuff. That is important. Don't just make people fit into your mold because you just like them, but then you tell the creative person what to do to make it fit you exactly. That's also backward. That is wrong, and that will lead to disaster and resentment. Or if you find somebody whose style you like, but then you just can't match the budget, so you still tell somebody else to copy that, it's also not cool. Don't do that. But if you found somebody, you like their style, it works with your branding, and you like their personality, because that is also really important for the photographer, you need to gel with them in some way. You need to enjoy their presence, because your body language is such a key element, and that cannot really be manipulated. You're not an actor or actress, and this shouldn't be, again, it shouldn't be so serious, it shouldn't be stiff, it shouldn't be triggering at all. From what I've heard, a lot of people find photo shoots unsettling, awkward, and triggering, because then they realize, oh my gosh, like I don't like my face, I don't like myself, and all of these things come up, and that's not necessarily the photographer's things. If you just really don't like yourself in photos ever, it can't work miracles. It's a self-worth, body love, image issue thing. I can only help you see more of how beautiful you are, which is another goal of mine, and I want to show people how beautiful they are in the way I see how beautiful they are, and I put that into the images for them to see it back. You know, like the Roberta mirror kind of thing, where people see themselves for the first time from a more objective, distance perspective. Because when you look at yourself in the mirror, you don't look at yourself in the mirror, really. You look at specific things you always look at, maybe even specific parts you always criticize, or you're like, oh, today this thing is saggy, there's a new frown line, I've got eye bags, like whatever. You don't really take yourself in, and you don't see yourself as you interact with other people, like the way your face lights up when you talk about your favorite subject, or the way you roll your eyes or whatever. Like when you look at yourself in a mirror, it's usually resting bitch face, right? Anyway, so I love that in photography you can get different perspectives of your characteristics of your personality and capture that. If you just want to capture your badassery, you can do a goddess photo shoot with me, where you can really capture your divine feminine, where you can feel so powerful like a queen, and I will make up a background story about your queendom, and we'll talk about your declarations and how you treat your peasants or whatever. So I will really try to get people out of their comfort zone in the best way, and out of their head, to just be more in the moment, to be make believe, right? It's almost this play time that I want to recreate. Because as a kid, you were full of ideas, you were full of making stuff up as you went along, and you just completely owned it. Like one day you wanted to be a dog, so you were walking around on all fours and you were barking, or you were wanting to be a princess, so you just put on a princess dress and went grocery shopping with your mom. You didn't care, and then you just used different language because you saw it on TV that one time, and suddenly you spoke just as we are hungry today. We are blinded by the sun. Like suddenly you're like speaking in plural, but all of these things. And so we can do that and be silly in a photo shoot, and that gets you such different images than if you just did that by yourself and try to enforce that environment. It is really just about the energy you put in there. And that just affects so many parts. And that also helps me get more creative stimulation for how the shoot can go, especially if it's before the shoot in a creative call, as I like to call it, where we talk about the vibe, the intention, all the things that you have at your disposal, because virtual photography works anywhere you have Wi-Fi, and preferably a tripod. So it could be on your couch, could be in your home office, could be in your garden, could be on the street, could be on your holidays, could be at an event you're attending. I can literally travel with you in your pocket as your personal pocket photographer and do virtual photo shoots with you everywhere in the world, as long as you've got Wi-Fi that's stable. Because I've done virtual photo shoots in Italy, in Switzerland, in Canada, in the US, England, and Germany, while still being at my own desk. I can do that. And one time I remember was so fun. I wanted to do a photo shoot in Montreal, and my client was like, there's this beautiful flower festival happening on the weekend. We could do that one. And there's Wi-Fi on the grounds, and I can just walk around and we find a cool spot. And I try to do some scouting, because I always find that's really important when you do photography, to look at the sun times and look at cool locations that could serve as backdrops that might work with the color scheme. Again, there's all of these details that I look for as a photographer that my clients do not. They don't have to. And that's my job, and that's what you get over having your regular selfies. Because yes, everybody can take a selfie, everybody can take a photo because you've got a phone. But how do you do that? What do you take into consideration? How are your skills in all of the photography stuff involved? Or can you just release the pressure and have an expert do it all for you, and you just look cute? You just feel good. And that's all you have to do, really. So that is the difference between just doing it yourself and having a photographer at your side. And with virtual photography, like I said, I can just travel with you. So you always have a person you already know, and you already know how it works, because the rapport is really important, right? And you usually don't take your photographer with you everywhere. You don't have your designated assistant following you and documenting everything for you. But you could with virtual photography, because usually I'm done after 30 minutes. Then we already got the main photos. Unless you want to switch up the backgrounds, unless you switch up the outfits. But if you're at an event, you're like, okay, 15 minutes until I have to go in. Let's just do a real cool photo sesh in this beautiful foyer, instead of just giving it to a random stranger who might make you look terrible because the lighting's off. You got the overhead light, and then you got weird shadows, or they cut off your feet or your head. I don't even trust strangers anymore to take photos of me, even if I give them instructions. So many times I'm like, don't show the floor, no concrete. I just want it to be from the rib cage upwards. And they will still cut off my head and show the entire concrete street. And I'm like, do we not see this? I'm so confused how you not see this very off-balance composition. But I know people who do photography workshops left and right, and they love photography as their hobby. They're great at taking photos of animals. But when it comes to people, I'm just like, did you not see that was like mid-blink and the hair was flying on my forehead, and I had like this weird dopey look? And you're like, yeah, the technicality, look at how crisp this photo is, and the blurry background, and look at the lighting, and it's beautifully framed from the back. I'm like, I don't care, I look shit. Okay. Right. Anyway, so that's why it's great to have a photographer in your pocket to take with you. Have you look good anywhere, even if it's just for a quick 15-minute shoot. Because I kid you not, if I do a photo shoot by myself, and I've done them around the world, because before the pandemic, I was living as a digital nomad, working with a lot of tourism companies around the world and destination marketing. So I would go to different locations from Japan all the way to, California, and in between so many countries. By now, I think I've visited 40 different countries, and I don't count layovers. So I was actually in those countries. And then taking a selfie, like putting on a tripod, setting the self timer with a real, like a DSLR camera, not a phone, and then running away and hoping it's the exact distance that I had envisioned, then doing some poses, hoping those look cute and there's nobody photobombing me, then running back, looking at it, being disappointed, and doing it again and again and again. A, it's just physically strenuous. B, there's always the fear of somebody bumping into your equipment, breaking it, or stealing your equipment, you're not having anymore, or the lighting is awful, like your dress is kind of weird, you have all sweat marks everywhere, or you just wish somebody would have told you to tilt your head just a bit more, to like pop your hip out, or just give you some kind of tip to make it look just a little bit better, right? And so the times I spend on a single selfie to get it right, usually it's like 30 minutes. And then I would still have to recreate it in a different location to get like 3 different photos that don't look like selfies for covering various areas in a destination. But if I had had somebody on the other end of my phone, and I could have had just the instructions of like tilt your phone to the left, lower it a little bit more, like move with one foot to the left or whatever, then I would know there's somebody there taking care of me. And so I would just go to one location once, strike a few poses with instructions, and then I have the photo in 5 minutes, move on to the next location, more 5 minutes, and I get like 10 different photos for the price of one self-timed thing that I had before. And so, especially if you come in with a plan, if you already have somebody who thinks about all of these details, because like I said, my brain is constantly busy, it's constantly active, it's constantly analyzing and evaluating everything, all the different scenarios. And that I do as well for photography. I take so much into consideration at one point in time during it. It is exhausting, but it also helps me be really clear and really effective in my work. And if you're not a photographer and if you don't do content regularly, you don't have that. And that's cool. I'm a little bit envious of that. I can't even travel anywhere without making it a whole project. I remember one time I went to Portugal for New Year's Eve by myself. I wanted to get away, and I was like, okay, I'm taking a break. I hadn't taken an actual holiday within 4 years since I started being self-employed and digital nomad, since I was working in tourism. I didn't really have any kind of holiday, because the general notion is if you work in tourism, you're always on holiday because you're always traveling. You're digital nomading, you're living in different places. So, oh my God, you're just on a constant holiday. But if all day long you are looking at the world through your lens, you are analyzing it and optimizing it, and then you're photoshopping it, and then you're like scheduling it, and then it's a project, and you cannot look at things, you cannot just really live in the moment, because anything could be a cool photo. And oh my God, if you just walked faster, you could reach this point by sunset, and then that photo would be great. But then maybe there's all of these people in the way, so maybe you have to come back the next day, and then you're just constantly processing. That's not a holiday. Holiday is just like chill out, do what you want to do, leave the equipment, because it is work for me. Photography is my hobby, but it's also my work, and it's really hard to separate that. And I realized I needed a break. This was all getting too much. I didn't want to be burned out, so I went to Portugal, and I was like, I took my camera, but I'm not allowed to make anything into content. And that stressed me out even more. I had the worst time going to Cascais, Sinai's, like the castle outside of Lisbon. I keep forgetting the name. Oh my gosh. But it is this beautiful, colorful castle overlooking the ocean with this romantic garden at the back. And that place, I had such an anxiety attack because I was standing at one of the most visually appealing spots. The lighting was perfect. I had researched that for, you know, reasons that I shouldn't have, with the overall goal of not working. But of course, I couldn't stop myself. So I found the perfect spot, the best lighting, and I propped up my camera. And then just suddenly all of the people would come out of the castle and just hang out there and take selfies for forever. I find that the less people know how to make a good photo, the more time they take up with photography. It is like, I don't know if anybody can confirm that, but I found like the people who just take their sweet time and take seemingly gazillion photos, they always take it the same way, but they do not go. If I take photos and be like, damn, snap, 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 and I'm done. And I would go through poses. I would be like, pose up, pose down, like smile, pop out from the side, from the back, from the front. I would just go like, not quite mechanical, but I would know already in my mind what I want. I would try out all the different things. I would analyze them. I would optimize them, and I would move on. And this is because I was a people pleaser. I was like, oh my God, I'm taking up too much space. There's other people maybe waiting to take the photo, so I need to get going. But also because I don't want to waste more time. I already got what I wanted, and I move on. Boom. And a lot of people, they don't take it that seriously. They just like mess around, and then they're oblivious to the surroundings. And like, I paid for this holiday, so I can take my sweet ass time. I don't care if anybody else also paid and they also on a time limit because they have to catch a bus. But I'm just here taking up the space at my own time. I hate that. Anyway, so I was just getting so stressed trying to work this, and I stood there waiting for people to leave. Again, I don't know where I got patience from. I was just standing there for half an hour waiting until the throng of people would just part a little bit. Then I would get into position, do my photos for like a minute, and then I'd be done. And I was like, why did I do this? This was not fun. Again, I didn't allow myself to use it as content. Who do I do this for? And so this entire week was just me trying to fight myself on not taking the photography to the extra level like I usually do and just snapping away, but it hurt my soul. And so I was like, yeah, okay, I shouldn't deprive myself of still like using my skills and using my joy in photography. And if it means that I like want to really optimize and get a perfect photo according to my high standards and expectations, that's fine. But that's not a holiday. That is not a holiday. Anyway, so that's that. But if I had had somebody in my camera to help me out with that, to actually also know my preferences and know my style, that would have also been so much more fun. And if you travel with certain people, like your best friend or somebody you always, or who has traveled with you a couple of times, so they know your style, what you like and what you don't like, that is such a valid and valuable thing to have, because everybody has their own stuff, right? And everybody has their own skill level, their own taste, and the flavor of the stuff that they produce. And so if you find something that matches with what your expectations are, or if you find somebody who adapts to that, who also likes to try different things, and that was amazing. I remember one time I had a friend with me visit me in Tokyo, and we went around. I showed her my favorite places to hang out, and then we wanted to do a photo shoot on the water of the moat of the Imperial Palace in Tokyo. So it's called Chidori Fuji, and there's boats. Usually it's where people propose and stuff. But we wanted to take some beautiful photos in the cherry blossoms on the water, and we both were in content creation, so we both constantly took our own selfies and our own photos, and we had our own visual aesthetic that we had. And I took so much care to really take different angles, to like play with foreground and background. And then she looked at the photo and she's like, no. And then she hailed a boat next to us and she just gave them her camera and she's like, take a few photos. And I was like mortally offended. I was like, you just give me some instructions or whatever. Like, I don't know what to do with that. Like, I felt wounded. And then those people just took the most, straight up touristy photos of her and she was happy with that. I'm like, okay, well, you do you. And then I gave her my camera and she gave it to those people as well. I'm like, what? No, I don't want them to take the same lame photos. And then they did, and half of them were blurry. I was like, damn, like I had specific ideas of, like I have a specific style, right? Of the foreground and the background, of how the composition is, like what space is around my face or how close up it is. There's all of these different things, but that's really what I want to tell you. You need to know who you can work with that actually jives with that, because you don't just pick somebody and then put all of your expectations on them if they're not actually ready or they care about it or they put in the effort. That, you can't just do that. So I've been very much more careful about who I select to take photos for and with. And also, before I take on clients, I always have these calls to see if we actually are on the same page, if they're okay with my creative style, because it's not for everybody. If you really want to have a completely organized, very predetermined shoot, almost like a studio shoot, that's not what you get with me. I think on my feet. I have, like I said, I have a concept. We have a vision board. We have vibes. We have the colors. We have the overall thing of how it works in your overall marketing and branding. But during the photo shoot, I might come up with different ideas. I might want you to try this and that. We still get the core photos that we talked about, but also we play around in different ways. And then you can tell me what you want to try and what you really don't want to try. And it's all cool. But it is being thrown into the creative process where I'm like, don't know what's going to happen. Are you cool with that? Or does it make you uncomfortable? Which, is fine as long as you communicate that, and then we can part, or I can recommend you to somebody else who is more suited to how you want to have a photo shoot happen with you. And really communication and setting expectations and being honest with yourself and others is the key, because ultimately when you work with a photographer and you're taking photos of yourself, it is a sort of intimate scene where you want to be captured. Your soul, your aura, your moment is captured by somebody else. So you're putting that on somebody else. And then that's also why a lot of people, when they look at their own photos, feel a certain kind of way. Sometimes it's like, oh my God, I didn't know I could look like that. Oh my gosh, I never saw myself smile like that. Or do I really do this? Like both good and bad. People will have a reaction in the way that, oh, I never see myself like that. Like, oh, I love how he captured that. I didn't know that was possible, right? So you are opening yourself up to the experience, to the expression, and you have somebody capture that emotional reaction, that vibe, and putting it out there for everybody to see who sees the photo. It's the same like why wedding photographers don't really take photos of people eating, because it's not flattering, it's weird, and it also feels vulnerable if you have somebody just like gulp down their food, or just like have like a blissful face, but like you just a scrunched up chin and like your eyes are like squished together, like I don't know, like what your happy face is for eating food, or like something spills and you look like, oh my gosh. It's funny, but it's also not necessarily nice to show that to the world, to present that like, here is this present, and now they're exposed in this weird phone. Like that's why people, I don't know that people really share party and friendship albums anymore on Facebook. Again, I grew up in the 90s, and then in 2000s, that's what we did on Facebook. We uploaded each party as its own album, and usually it was not sifted through. You just dumped it all and you tagged everybody, no matter how stupid they looked. And usually they looked very stupid because you had flash on and then you were blinded in the dark room. and then it's a mid-action or mid-talking. Like, people just looked awful. But it didn't feel as big of an impact as it would be now. Now it would be absolutely mortifying because anybody can see what you do on the internet. So, yeah. So it is a vulnerable moment to share that and to trust somebody to not take derpy photos of you or to keep those derpy photos from ever seeing the light of day, right? Because the photographer has all of the unedited footage. They have a lot of stuff on you, which is why you also always should have a contract and I shouldn't go and do things with them. I mean, technically, you own the right to your visual representation. Like, nobody can just recreate or take your photos, and then, that's illegal. But it's always good to have a contract and to know exactly what you're going to get, what the photographer's going to put in there. So also it protects both sides. But then let's not get into the contract side of things. That might be a cool topic for a future episode. But yeah, photography for me is really a way to bond with people in that way, where you get to know them in a different way. Like they say, when you take somebody traveling, you get to know a person much more when you put them through stress. Or like when people say, yeah, divorce really brings out the actual person, is always a little bit paired with stress in some way. And photography sessions can be stressful in a good and bad way. They can be stimulating, they can be a challenge. Again, both good and bad. Sometimes that really just elevates the moment and makes you much more heightened in your senses and really zoned in and focused on what's going on, which is good. But it also helps you learn yourself, learn about other people, and it helps communicate better because you have these learnings, especially with virtual photography when you don't see me. So I can't show you exactly the pose that I want you to do. So I'm trying to play charade almost, but only audibly. So I'm just directing you with where to put your arm and your fingers and your hands, and then they interpret that in a different way than I had anticipated. So I need to course correct and like come up with different terms, and we just laugh about it because it feels silly. And again, that brings in the fun and makes people feel looser, and it shifts the body language, it shifts the vibe, and that's really what I want. This isn't about perfection. You don't have to be a supermodel, but you have to be open to the process. And so yeah, and then that also helped me be better at my own job by taking photos of myself, doing self-portraits, where I see different sides of myself, where I capture different moments of my life. And then if you look at them back to back, you can see how my skills progressed, how I was more creative because I let go of being so serious about it, and how I also was more playful around it, how I learned to be better storytelling through visuals and all of that. And so all of this knowledge, I just want to push through virtual photography in a way onto my clients so they have an amazing experience and they can just lean back and enjoy and then have amazing photos of themselves that they're proud of. And then hopefully also helps their self-confidence. It helps build community, and it really helps them along their journey of self-discovery, ultimately. And like I said, this entire podcast in my current mission in life is to be more authentic, and whatever that means, because it can be interpreted in so many different ways. So I would love to hear your opinions on this. If you're willing to share, you can always connect with me on social media. I'm on all the platforms, and you can leave a comment. It will also help greatly if you could leave a review for this podcast so it reaches more people, because it's still fairly new. And if you've got any questions, if you want feedback, if you just want to connect with me, I'm always open to that. The best way to reach me is via email or as a DM on Instagram. And all of the links for that are down below in the description and show notes. And I'll leave you to it now, and I wish you a fabulous week until I hear and see and speak to you back next week on Friday. Bye-bye!